I thought I'd do a follow-up of the experiment that we were doing on the starch, the acorn starch, and it actually does seem to be working. But what we actually had to do was we needed to blitz up the acorn meal a little bit more. And as you can see at the bottom here, we have quite a layer of the starch. This is the first of 2 bowls I have. And we do have quite a nice little layer there, so we will strain off all of the liquid, and I will keep this in a container and pop it in the freezer until we've gone through all of our acorns, and at that point then I can wash it and dehydrate it, and it can be used as any other thickening agent in our food. So that obviously shows that that experiment does work. I'd never actually seen or heard of that before, but you know, obviously research is a good thing to do. So the next thing we will be doing is we'll be doing a video on the next process when the leaching is done. So we will catch you guys then. We are on day 3 of the acorn processing, and I'm currently processing the starch. And what I've done is I have put all the liquid and the starch mixed together through my jelly bag, and really that's so that I can catch all of the little fragments of the acorn meat that we don't really want in the starch, and they'll all be left behind in the jelly bag, and we will just throw them into the acorn meal. So as you can see, it's a very milky coloured substance, and after a couple of hours all of that will actually settle to the bottom of the container. I will be putting this into a clear glass jug, and all of the starch will settle to the bottom, and the liquid will actually turn more of a yellowy, watery colour. And at that point then we will take the starch away, and I will just put it in a container to freeze until we've finished the whole process of all the acorns. Now also, as you can see, day 3 of the leaching process, and I mentioned in the beginning of the video that it can take a week for that process to do, but you can see that the liquid is actually, just after 3 days, started to clear nicely. And I have tasted this meal and I could not really taste much bitterness there, so I think these acorns were less high in tannins than maybe some others. But I will just repeat this process maybe today and tomorrow just to make sure, and then I'll re-taste them again, and then we will also drain them and we'll put them in a bag in the freezer until we have done all the acorns, and then it will just be a big processing job to do them all together, to get them all dry, dehydrated, roasted, whatever we decide to do with them. So when we are at that stage, then we will be back. It's day 4 of the acorn processing, and we have a couple of things that we need to do today. One, we need to do this starch, and the second thing we need to do is actually rinse off the acorn meal or the acorn grits. So first of all, we're going to be doing the starch, and I'll just try to lift this up slowly so you can see. There's a great deal of water in here, but if you look towards the bottom, you can see quite a thick layer of starch, and it may be easier to see in the jug. You can just see the white layer up to here, and that is the acorn starch. So really all we have to do is very carefully take off this liquid, because that's surplus to requirements. And all I'm going to do is just use this cup to scoop out the liquid on this first one, and I will continue to do the other ones after, just to give you a demonstration. And what I'm going to do is, because we haven't processed all the acorns as yet, we will be doing this in batches, so I will be freezing this starch off this batch. And I'll also be freezing the acorn meal or acorn grits from the first batch of acorns that we will be dealing with shortly. So as you get towards the starch, you need to be a little bit more careful, because you don't want to be scooping up and wasting any. So I will probably use a smaller cup or even a spoon. A ladle actually would work perfectly here, so I'm just going to get my soup ladle, and I can't because it's dirty. So I'll just carry on with the cup, see how far we can go down with this, just to skim all that water off. And I'll just lift up again to show you that you can see now we're almost at the line of starch. There's a teeny little bit more to go. And as soon as we see the water starting to turn quite a white milky colour, we know that we are hitting the starch layer at the bottom, which I can see a little teeny bit of that now because I'm actually touching the bottom layer. So I'm just going to tip the jug up slightly, and this is the first time we've done this, so I am kinda probably wasting a little bit. So what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to leave that as it is, and I'm just going to re-stir it, mix all that starch up again in there. And if you look in the bottom, you can actually see the starch here all stuck to the bottom of the jug. But I'm going to put this into a smaller jar, and I'm going to carry on doing the same thing with these two big containers also. And we will put that into a smaller jar, and maybe it will be easier to work with in a bigger amount rather than a small, you know, little skinny bit at the bottom on each one of these. It's kind of hard to do. So I will get a jar. There's a little bit of ice in there from the fridge. I will cut this off now, and I will get a jar. I will repeat this process until it's in a jar, and then I'll bring you back. I've now finished taking all the liquid off the three jugs that I had, and on first appearance I can see that it's actually quite not a useless thing to do, but something that maybe isn't worth doing in respect of the amount of water is used. And you'll see why, because this is a 500 ml jar, and this is the starchy water that I've taken off all of this water here. And I will probably be right in saying that there will only be a very small layer of starch in the bottom of this. So the question is it really worth all of this water and all of the effort to get what will be a teeny amount of starch? So that'll be a question I'll be asking myself, and I don't know if I would do this process again. Sorry, the camera just got knocked. I don't know if I'll be repeating this process again. I will see how much we get, but it is an awful waste of water just to get a small amount of starch from these acorns. So that being said, I'm going to move on now, and I will get the acorns out of the fridge, and that will be the next job. So I will see you then. So I have my 4-litre jars of the acorn meal or acorn grits, and as you can see the water is clearer than what it was in the beginning process. Now I tasted these yesterday and I think that they're ready for the next stage, which is quite an easy process. So all I have here is my jelly bag, and all I'm going to do is pour the acorn meal, give it a little shake first so it all mixes up, and I'm just going to pour each one of these jars straight through my jelly bag, and we will rinse these jars out so we don't waste any. And then we will be rinsing this meal in the jelly bag to make sure that we have all of the tannins out. And we'll do that under the tap and budgies here. So we'll just finish up these 2 jars. And on first taste, there doesn't seem to be any taste in particular that you could say, oh, they taste like walnuts or hazelnuts or anything like that. I actually couldn't really taste anything to them. Maybe if they are roasted, then they will bring a flavour, you know, a bit more of a flavour out. This is the first year, well, last year, 2019, is the first year that we've actually picked acorns. So this is an experiment, and it's first for us to be doing this. So the acorn meal is now in my jelly bag, and that's just going to drain through, and then we can take it over to the sink to give this a final rinse. So I'm going to continue to just rinse the last little remnants out of these 2 jars, and then we will be over at the sink. We are over at the sink now, and we're ready to rinse our acorn meal with some fresh water. And what I've done is I've actually split this bag into a bowl because there's too much to try and do in one go. So this will probably take 3 batches to do this. And yesterday I just did a little tester batch. This is all ready to be processed, roasted, to be used. But what I will do is when I've done all of this and this, I will just get a Ziploc bag and I will put it all in the freezer until we have all of our acorns done and complete. Because the process, you have to dehydrate them, so you need a large quantity. So all I'm going to do is we're just going to run some water into the jelly bag, like so, giving them a rinse. And then we're going to turn the jelly bag around. And as you can see, the water coming off there is clear. So that shows that the acorns are actually ready. There's no tannins left in there. And I've just tasted them again just now. And there is a slight little bitterness to them, but it's not unpalatable. It's hardly there at all. So we will just carry on. And as you can see, yeah, we have really nice, clean water coming through. So we squeeze as much of that water as we can out just by turning the jelly bag, but not too hard that we actually make holes in it or rip it. And then I'll transfer this to my plate over here, and we will do the next batch. My plans for the acorn meal is probably try some cookies. I know you can make bread, but I'll probably just try some cookies initially with some maple syrup. So that is the big ball of the acorn meal that we've just rinsed. So I'm just going to plop that on the plate and move that out of the way. And then we will fill the jelly bag up again and repeat the process. So yeah, I will probably make cookies, and I will use maple syrup and probably some wild flour in there as well, just to, as a, you know, an experiment, just to see what that tastes like. And I think we're going to get a good batch of flour actually out of this, because we seem to have, you know, for the little quantity of acorns that we actually shelled, we seem to have quite a good amount of meal. So I'm really pleased with that. It gives us an idea of how much we have to gather, you know, next year. And the other thing as well with acorns is you can actually store them. So you can store them in their shell in a cool place for up to, I think, 2 years. So if you get a really big bumper crop one year, the next year you may have a really poor crop. You know, it's the same with any type of fruiting tree. They will do really good one year and there'll be nothing on them the next year. So it's a good way of preserving. You just keep them in their shell in a cool place. So I managed to fit all of that second batch in here. And as you can see again, that water is running nice and clean. So we'll just repeat that with a second rinse. And really that's about it for this process. I will be roasting some of this, but I do need to complete cracking and leaching all the other acorns that we still have left. And at that point we will get back with some more acorn videos for you. So if you like that, then please give us a thumbs up, like the video, subscribe, click the bell icon so you don't miss any future videos that come out, and I will see you soon. As mentioned previously, I wasn't really impressed with the effort or the water that the acorn meal took to get any decent amount of starch. So this is the second batch I've done, and I'm actually trying it a different way. So what I've actually done is I've blitzed up the acorns to a finer meal, a little bit finer than what I had in the first batch. And then what I've done is I put them in a jug with my stick blender with some water and whizzed it up. So we actually got a much better coloration, as you can see down here. It's a little bit yellow on the top there, but it almost looks like milk. And I think we're going to get more starch that way because we've actually processed them more. So all I do is, as I say, I just put the whizzed up grits, acorn grits or acorn meal into a jug, fill it with water, whiz them up with my stick blender, and then put them through my jelly bag and just squeeze all of that starch out. And I will do that twice. So once the first batch is done, they'll go back in the jug and they'll get more water and another whiz, and then they'll repeat the process, you know, through the jelly bag again. And it would be interesting to see in a couple of hours if we've actually increased the yield of starch by doing that, because I did use some of the acorn starch to make a deer stew and it actually worked really well. So if I can find a way that I can get an increased yield, then I think that'll be the way to go in the future.